Hi everybody, my name's Thomas Quinn, and this is Undeniable. Hi everyone, how are you doing? Are you staying healthy? Are you staying sane? Here at Undeniable Pod, we're taking a break from our traditional interviews during the pandemic, but I've been working on recording an audiobook for my novel, The Happy End. I'm offering it up for free here, 5 chapters at a time. So if you haven't, please subscribe, please like, please rate. I hope you listen and enjoy, and would love to hear from you about any thoughts or comments. Stay safe, stay strong, stay committed. We're in this together. The Happy End by Thomas Quinn. Part 1. The Unpleasant Beginning. Chapter 6. The sudden ring of a phone created bedlam through the ranks of the meeting room as the representatives woke simultaneously. It was word of choppers in the air coming to evacuate the delegates, filling the room with joy and relief. They began cheering and hugging each other, burying all grief that might have resulted from their occupation together in the meeting room. Horace hung up the phone, not bothering to disguise his voice, searching for his lighter and then cursing the world when he couldn't find it. One of his heads, who had been waiting just outside the door, appeared as if from thin air. "Something the matter, sir? Give me a damn lighter, will ya?" The head was gone, only to return 5 seconds later with a lighter and a smile, watching as Horace lit his pipe. "Medicinal," smirked Horace through clenched teeth, gripping his pipe. "Of course," assured the head, before heeding Horace's stare, realizing that he was no longer needed. It was D-Day +4. By the 3rd day, the people who made up the bulk of the mob realized that even if they enacted vengeance on those they held responsible, life would have to go on, even if one day near it would come to an end. And while the reps and their entourages were left sleeping in chairs and on top of tables, the people were rebuilding from the debris. In some cases, the very men responsible for the destruction of property held hammer in hand. Ahmed was whisked away from the observatory in a rusted van, and once back at the hotel, wishing only for a shower and a bed to sleep in, he arrived in Horace's room, where his speech was waiting for him. He was then told about the emergency UN meeting and that he, Dr. Ahmed Yasevi, was due to deliver the message as savior to the world. At first, the thought appalled him, but it was Horace who allowed him to understand what this meant. Ahmed was going to be the one with the answer. He was giving the word of hope. A united world would survive. And though Horace would not allow himself to think it, a part of him knew from the very beginning that the savior would be sacrificed. News of the emergency UN meeting spread through the restored connection of the net. Horace and Ahmed sat in silence, taking in the fight for position in front of the new UN building in Vienna, as New York was deemed unsafe. Horace was counting the seconds until his particular reporter of choice read back the information he had just posted for her. The young redhead put her finger to her ear. He stopped counting. This just in. Her mannerisms began to scare him. Word of hope. There is a rumor of a scientist who says he can save the world. The reporter, of maybe 25 years, paused to add dramatic effect, stealing a few beats of Horace's heart. She was Samantha, if only time could have stopped 35 years sooner. The jet engine snapped him back to the present, having for a second lost himself in the past, wondering how 15 years could go by so quickly. He had once believed he would never be able to live without her, but with each new day proved himself wrong. A more accurate truth was that he would never feel complete again. Horace looked at Ahmed, who sat across from him with hands that had grown as rigid as talons, rereading the speech for the 19th time, having only stopped now to listen to the reporter. "No one knows the identity of this mystery speaker summoned to the UN. Ahmed smiled at him nervously. Horace didn't notice. He had slipped back into memory. Chapter 7. The stage set. The lights flashed, calling the delegates to the main hall. The world was watching. Ahmed and Horace were left alone in the green room, watching via closed-circuit television as the meeting was called to order, and the entrance of Director General Zhu. Director General Zhu was the first of a new generation of leader. The rise of corporate oligarchies through the latter half of the 20th century, and their obscene grip on the entire social process during the third and fourth decades of the 21st century, left the United Nations essentially toothless. Vetoes stopped any progressive policy. Smaller states that put their faith in the UN saw corporations wield unprecedented control over the legislature. Policies were frequently enacted that went against the fundamental rights of humanity. Oil companies controlled environmental policy. Shipping and fishing companies controlled the initiatives meant to save the acidic oceans. Private military firms voted against peace treaties. Agricultural giants controlled farming. And on it went. The game was rigged. Democracy's root was in the representation of a free and educated populace. However, it too became just one of the thousands of words rebranded by the corporate machine. It became a weapon to mobilize the ignorant against policies that challenged the status quo, using fear to ensure they voted for the corporate elites, even if it went against self-preservation. The earth began to fight back. Storms wiped out crops and leveled power grids. Oceans unleashed walls of water and sacked entire island nations in a blink of an eye. Hundreds of millions were displaced, and refugee camps spread across the continents, spurring fears of revolution as global food and social services depleted. Nations became desperate, and for once the developed world was not spared from the earth's wrath. The people demanded action. Studies took place, some holding more weight than others, but one notion became clear. The misinformed masses could no longer choose the most qualified leader. Politicians could not be trusted. Democracy received its pink slip. In its place, a worldwide curriculum was instated, where future leaders were to earn their position, regardless of sex, race, or homeland. Only 1 out of every 8 billion could finish the schooling with the necessary aptitude to head the United Nations. It had to be this way. They would have to sacrifice family, nationality, and personal freedom for the greater good. Unfortunately for Director General Zhu, on the day she was to obtain her position, at the culmination of 40 years of sacrifice and study, the world order declared themselves the true global leadership. And like that, the United Nations was eclipsed once more, branded a tool of fascism by the newly created marketing branch of the world order, and democracy, as previously defined, was saved. Director General Zhu approached the podium. Her entire life had led to this moment, and as she called the meeting to order, those in the room who had long ago dismissed the UN took notice of her poise and charisma. Ahmed's confidence began to falter. The time was near for him to join the delegates out in the Hall of Nations. His hands began to shake, rattling the paper that his speech was written on, and stirring Horace from the bar, where he was pouring his third whiskey of the past 12 minutes. He took the shot before pouring another for Ahmed. "Here, take this. It will help with the nerves." "I must say," Ahmed protested, "seeing you drink like this isn't the most assuring of comforts." "Are you crazy? Do you know how much this stuff costs?" Horace's cheeks, flushed by the drink, broke into an emphatic smile. "Remember, all humans have ever wanted from this life was an answer to the big question. You, my friend, can now give it to them." Ahmed scrutinized his friend. searching for insincerity in his words, but found none. And with that, he too began to smile, before raising his glass in salute. To a new and better world. There was a knock, and a man in a black suit came to the door to escort Ahmed to the podium. Horace was left behind at the bar, pouring another glass, no longer smiling, realizing that in 10 minutes he would either be deemed a hero or a villain. There were only 2 possibilities. With this realization, he knew of nothing better to do and grabbed the bottle, leaving the glass behind. He went to the couch and sat with his feet on the coffee table, watching as Ahmed walked to the podium. He was met by a standing ovation thanks to the rousing introduction from Director General Zhu. "Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Dr. Ahmed Youssevi, Earth's last hope." The sight of Ahmed was too much for Horace to bear. He tried to switch the television off, but realized that there was no remote, nor was there a power button. He settled by turning the volume down as he waited in complete silence, still gripping the bottle of scotch, listening through the walls as the applause from the delegates died, and it came time for Ahmed to speak. "Samantha," whispered Horace aloud, "what have I done?" Chapter 8. The applause was thunderous. Ahmed felt like an emperor at the Colosseum, as the audience waited for him to decide the fate of a fallen gladiator, the human condition. He knew that no one in the hall understood the science behind what was just said. In actuality, the science hadn't existed before conjured by Horace only a few short hours earlier. But the message wasn't lost on them. They could be saved. After 4 days enduring the weight of death hanging over them like the falling foot of God, the world was given hope. Ahmed outlined the 8-step program as Horace had written it. There was no need for rhetoric or propaganda. Politics had no place in the new world. He read the list to the UN and the world watching at home, like a child reading his Christmas list to his parents, even though they had long ago given up belief in Santa Claus. He looked out at the faces of all those who were supposed to be in charge, hanging on his every word, and knew then that they would not refuse him. No one could deny him, even when he called for the dissolving of states and the very positions of power that they maintained. It was as simple as life or death. When he looked down again, he had lost his place, so he began from the beginning. 1. All states are hereby dissolved. 2. All debts, domestic and foreign, are forgiven. 3. All available resources not essential to the preservation of life will be repurposed. 4. Each person is equal. 5. Each person is responsible to work. 6. Each person is guaranteed shelter and proper clothing fit for their specific job and environment. 7. Every community shall be responsible for their production of necessities for life. 8. Any person who deviates from their specific job or who do not comply with the New World Standard will be remanded for special work detail. There would be no vote or debate. For the world to survive, Ahmed assured the delegates these 8 laws would become effective immediately. He then outlined in layman's terms the creation of 19 antimatter projectors, which would be used to dissolve the threatening rogue planet, known now as RP. His address lasted only 10 minutes. A full minute of silence passed as the delegates took in what had just been said, still examining the data on their tablets. Ahmed was no longer holding his speech, but could feel his hands beginning to shake at his side and sweat droplets pooling on his forehead. It was the President of the United States who was first to speak, even though China had long ago surpassed the U.S. in both GDP and standard of living. Horace, with his emptying bottle of scotch, turned the volume back up, wanting to hear the world's response to his vision. "What do you mean by the phrase dissolving of states?" asked the American president, who served in a symbolic capacity, holding no real power in the world order. It means that individual states will no longer exist, answered Ahmed with the same type of indignation that Horace was choking on through drunken laughter. Are you saying that the United States no longer exist? Questioned the crooked-eyed president. Exactly. Next question. Ahmed stood his ground like a prize fighter. One by one, the world leaders tried to comprehend where they might fit in this new world. It was his duty to tell them they were out of a job. But not to worry, he quickly added. Article 5 of the New World Charter. Each person shall be responsible to work. What type of work? Asked Director General Zhu, beating the Chinese representative to the punch. That will be outlined in further detail tomorrow, with the release of our full report. However, I must stress, we literally have a ticking clock, and it will be no easy feat to build 19 antimatter projectors and get them functional and online in time. We are not out of the woods yet. The threat is still all too real. We must have full cooperation if life on Earth is to survive. Horace cut the live feed for the billions watching at home. That said, Ahmed's demeanor changed. I must assure you all that dignitaries such as those present in the room will play a vital role in assuring the smooth transition from the ways of the old world to the new. Horace had forgotten about the full report. He was lying with his pants undone, half asleep on the couch. Throwing the bottle of scotch to the ground, he divided up what he assumed a report of such magnitude needed to accomplish. Then he sent a link to inform the heads that he need not mention what would happen if they did not have their sections completed by morning. And with that, he picked the bottle back off the floor, turning to the television as the United States President was speaking again. But when you say the United States won't exist, what do you mean? Ahmed woke Horace with a smile, pleased on how he handled the 6 hours of interrogation that followed his 10-minute speech. The room filled with people who were just as pleased with him, and though Horace had passed out holding his bottle on the couch, no one seemed to notice him. The crowd revolved around Ahmed. They were curious to know how exactly the antimatter projectors were going to save them. Well, it's pretty basic physics, drawled Ahmed, with a newly adopted voice that only Horace noticed. Newton tells us that for every action there is a reaction, and thus for matter to exist, so too must antimatter. Yes, but of course. The yes-men wanted nothing more than to believe that it was that simple. For every action there is a reaction. There was no looming threat hanging over them. They were going to live forever. However, this has always just been a theory. It is only in the last few months, and with the creation of the RAD 4200 telescope, that we are even able to hypothesize. What do you mean, hypothesize? Asked the Chinese representative. This is the best we've got, coldly answered Ahmed in Mandarin. What was that? Questioned the American president. He said it's the best they got, answered the president's chief of staff. The best they got? I'm sorry, son, but I'm not disbanding 400 years of history of the greatest country in the world on some Arab's hunch. Mr. President, attempted his chief of staff, but to no avail. His protest was met by the president's raised hand, awaiting Ahmed's response. I'm actually from Polynesian descent, sir. Ahmed looked towards Horace, who was only half listening, staring at the label of the empty bottle. Sir, what we do know for certain is that in a little more than 3 years, the earth as we know it will not exist, all life dead. This is fact. There is no escaping this. Ahmed's words brought silence to the room, except for the faintest slip of a chuckle from Horace, who turned a few heads but held no one's attention. Thankfully for both Horace and Ahmed, no one knew who he was, dismissed as a drunk, who had somehow secured the highest possible security clearance. This is our only shot. I'm certain that if we can find a way to work together and follow the course of action outlined today, we will succeed. This seemed to appease the president, at least for the moment, and as there were 50 others in the room who wanted their time with Ahmed, before he could ask another question, the Russian representative jumped in. Where will the 19 projectors be stationed? That's a great question. Ahmed's praise to the Russian seemed to infuriate the American president more than the rebuff of him. All we know for certain now is that we must be able to project outwards from the entire surface of the Earth. Thus we will divide the Earth into a grid. Each projector will represent a specific quadrant. We will need them along the equator and in both poles, on land and in sea. The construction must begin immediately if we are to succeed in our time frame. Again, this will all be outlined in the report that each of you will receive tomorrow. Excuse me, sir. There's a call here for you. A woman in a black suit broke through the circle. He says it's urgent. Ahmed excused himself to the hallway, leaving the delegates, who immediately began taking sides for or against him. Are you having a good time, Ahmed the Savior? He recognized Horace's voice, but hadn't seen him leave. Where are you? Look out the window. Ahmed went to the window and saw Horace standing alone in the courtyard, or so he thought. Then he noticed someone else with him. It was a woman. He couldn't place it, but he knew he had seen her before. What are you doing out there? I'm doing an interview. What? Yes, you see, old friend, while you appease those who used to have the power, I am making sure that the people realize the power is now theirs. Is that the reporter from the plane? Ha! Good eye, old friend. I should have known that I could never play one over on you, Ahmed the Savior. What about me? What am I to do while you're out there with the beautiful 20-year-old? You're doing what you're supposed to be doing. Don't worry, old friend. Your time will come. But for now, keep them jumping through your hoops. Horace broke into another fit of laughter. Do you want to say something to Ahmed the Savior? Ahmed could hear the sound of a woman giggling on the other end. Come now, are you not a professional? I'm giving you an exclusive of a lifetime. No? All right, old friend. Sam here seems shy. I will have to call you tonight. My name's Sarah, corrected the reporter. But what am I supposed to do about... Ahmed couldn't get his concerns out fast enough. The phone died, and he was left alone at the window to watch as a black limousine pulled up and Horace and the reporter drove away. Chapter 9. Horace woke in a room unfamiliar to him. For a minute he wondered if maybe he hadn't slept with the young 20-nothing reporter, even if that seemed almost impossible within his flaccid shell. Then again, he did feel rejuvenated lately. Why couldn't it be so? The door opened, and Horace put on his most seductive look, but the shock of catching a glimpse of himself in the mirror wiped it from his face. He ended with a much more relaxed expression. The anticipation of seeing his young Samantha again brought a slight twitch to his member, confirming in his mind that perhaps it was true. He had succeeded in coitus. Unfortunately for Horace, this new-found vigor evaporated with the sight of a sleeve draped in black polyester. I trust you're decent, posed a male voice. In walked one of the men who had escorted him from the plane to the limousine, and then into the UN. He knew this because he had an eerie resemblance to a young Richard Nixon, the 37th President of the United States. 2 sugars, no cream, just how you like it, no? The man walked over to the bed and handed him a coffee, before motioning to his suit folded over the chair in the corner. Why don't you get dressed? We're scheduled to leave in 15. I'll be waiting outside. The man then turned and left him alone, closing the door behind him. Horace was perplexed. What did it all mean? He got dressed hesitantly, drinking the coffee in small sips, as if unsure of poison, or worse, though he wasn't quite sure what could be worse. After 5 minutes of silent deliberation, he realized there weren't any answers to be had in his bedroom. In the kitchen there was a cantaloupe and other fresh fruit spread on a platter beside a glass of chilled orange juice, but still no sign of the man in the black suit. The limousine was waiting for him in the lane, triggering the memory to why this man looked so familiar. He was his chauffeur. He got into the back of the limousine, and only after sitting did he realize that he wasn't alone. A man that looked 15 years his senior sat across from him, presumably waiting all this time. Jesus! Horace exclaimed, startled. Who are you? Listen to the lungs on you, the man mocked with a brief chuckle, sipping his coffee in the process of undoing the cap to a flask that he pulled from his inside pocket of his jacket. Irish up yours? He posed, before pouring the contents of his flask into his mug, finishing with a swig. For us who don't sleep, it's never too early. Horace declined with a shake of his head. We knew you weren't going to fade away, Horace. Excuse me? You and I aren't so different. We are both very determined and stubborn men. He took a long drink from his coffee, expelling an exaggerated sigh of relief, wiping his mouth with the sleeve of his jacket. You see, we knew you weren't going to end it. Your profile did say the probability was very likely. Can you believe it? Horace, the computer gave you an 83% certainty of suicide in the first 72 hours. Though of course I had you around 3-1. Suicide? Smoke? Questioned the man, pulling a pack from the same inside pocket. Oh yeah, that's right, you don't smoke. He tried to light his cigarette, but his lighter wouldn't hold a flame. You wouldn't happen to have a lighter, would you, old chap? No, didn't think so. The man pushed a button and the divider fell between the front and back of the limousine. Michael, got a light? Sure thing, sir. The driver lit his smoke while never taking his eyes off the road. After the divider went back up, the man turned to Horace, for a second staring straight into his eyes, expecting Horace to speak, but he didn't. Horace was familiar with this tactic. The man was waiting for Horace to look away. It was a sign of dominance, but he wouldn't allow it, and thus they held each other's glance in silence while the man smoked half his cigarette. Horace, not in defeat, but rather out of curiosity, turned to look out the window, watching as the scenery passed. Having only been in Vienna as a university student, the countryside looked foreign to him, much different than the Vienna he remembered. I suppose you are wondering where we are taking you. That's only natural. The man opened his window, flicking the butt of his cigarette. You shouldn't do that, accused Horace. It's the leading source of cancer in birds. If you ask me, birds dumb enough to eat a cigarette butt deserve cancer. I'm sure you're familiar with what Darwin once wrote, a little story about survival of the fittest, justifying our poisoning of the world. It was that type of ignorance that Darwin was fighting against, this belief that humans were destined to the luxury of survival. I thought we were talking about birds. They don't eat the butts, just as you would never eat a piece of plastic. But when the nicotine and arsenic sinks into their habitat, diluted by rain and is broken down, I suppose that's what makes us fitter and happier. Horace could feel that old too familiar feeling boiling inside. It was the same anger that fueled his life of research. You know, you may have a point there. He dropped the divider again. Give me that light, will ya? He lit another smoke, only to take a few quick, long hauls before flicking it out the window, staring at Horace the entire time, daring him to act. Stop the car! Horace's voice was shrill, and he was almost instantly ashamed of the way it sounded. He felt like a child again, getting pushed around by his stepfather, holding him under water in his attempt at horseplay, never understanding Horace's fear of drowning. We're almost there, Horace, don't fret. He opened his briefcase and took out the report, which Horace had yet to read, but was compiled by the heads to his specifications. We have to talk to you about your report. What report? Horace retorted, as if truly another retiree, and not the mastermind shaping the new world to how he saw fit. Yours, Horace. Do give us a little credit. Do you think that we believe that the world is about to come to an end from something as ridiculous as a rogue planet? A shiver went down his spine. Who are you? Demanded Horace. Did you leave me that note? Pie? What note? The man seemed genuinely confused, and Horace left it at that. What do you want from me, and why do you think I have anything to do with this report? Horace, I am but a chosen representative. I've been selected on behalf of my colleagues to talk to you. I've been told that I'm the least threatening. Jesus, thought Horace, if he's the least threatening, I'd hate to see the whole lot of them. But you still haven't told me what it is you want from me, or why me. The antimatter projectors. What about them? My colleagues want to be contracted to build them. Build them? What the hell do you want that for? Because we estimate it is a project that will cost about $18 trillion. Money! Horace masked his shock in a single hearty laugh. I should have known. Not money, but power, Horace. We can't trust this type of technology to just anybody. Think of what could happen if it fell into the wrong hands. They could use it on humans. They could use it on us. They could hold the world hostage. Don't you see that it has to be regulated and controlled? I don't think you understand, began Horace. From what I hear, if we don't build these projectors, there will be no world left. I assume if you've tracked me here, you know my history, and thus you know my expertise. I don't care what you believe, or don't, or who your enemies are. But I've been over the data. Let me assure you that if everything does not go according to plan, there will be nothing left for you or your scumfuck capitalists to profit off of. Such vulgarity. The limousine pulled up to an empty field, and the driver got out and opened their door. The man waited for Horace to exit first. Where are we? As long as man has had his consciousness, he has feared the end of the world. First it was from the gods, be it floods or famine or plague. Then it was war and the fear of nuclear bombs. And now it appears that it has reverted back to God, or chaos, or whatever you want to call this looming threat from space. But know this, life will always survive. Where are we? Chernobyl. Ukraine? Impossible. They had only been driving for 20 minutes, though Horace was beginning to remember what he had first believed to be strange dreams of travel. Had he boarded a flight with the reporter? The man sat back in the limousine, and Michael, the driver, closed the door behind him, leaving Horace in place, staring out at a field of gently swaying sunflowers. The wind brought with her the cold touch of loneliness. The limousine pulled a U-turn and came passing by again. The back window fell. Good intentions can only go so far, Dr. Newsom. We'll be in touch. He flicked another cigarette butt at his feet, and the limousine drove off at top speed. Chapter 10. Horace called Ahmed, but he was unavailable. He demanded answers, but the voice on the other end offered none. His meeting with the man had him shook. What did he want? Horace didn't like unknown variables. He obsessed over them until he figured out their value. But he was having issues with their conversation. He had met plenty of powerful men. This man was different. He was a con man playing a part. But what was his root? Horace couldn't figure it out. Hoping a glass of wine would loosen his thoughts, he fell victim to the bottle. Is it just for vengeance? He had given up on the mysterious man and was examining his own motives. But the question was unanswered, left for the bottom of a glass. He rang the front desk, asking for another bottle. But unbeknownst to him, the staff had all been sent home, as stipulated in the report. Damn the man, he decreed to the woman on the other end. Horace decided that a sauna would do his body good, thinking nothing of his inebriated condition or poor hydration. The heat was unbearable for most, or so he thought of the deserted sauna. He was still not grasping the effect of the report on the masses. There would be no one in the sauna or by the pool, and definitely not in the restaurant. They were in the process of stripping their houses and workplaces of all materials deemed needed, and thus outlawed for possessing. Is it love? Horace liked to think himself an altruist, but at his core he was a logical man, and all the facts disproved this. He was selfish. He had only loved one woman in his life, and she had left him for the grave. He was at best indifferent to the suffering of others. At worst, he was bored by it. The idea that his revolution was anything more than a spiteful quest for purpose was improbable. And yet, he hoped. Yes, how can I help? Asked the same sensitive voice. Horace was back in his room, face down on his bed, naked, the receiver lying free beside him on his pillow, causing his voice to seem distant. "What is it to feel loved?" "I'm sorry, I'm not sure I know what you mean." "What is it to feel loved?" His tone was more aggressive the second time. "Are you all right, sir?" The voice was motherly and sincere. "Is there anything you need?" "I need you to answer the fucking question." Horace heard a gasp from the other end, before adding brokenly, "Please." There was a defeatist quality in this last utterance, a genuine quest for an answer. And at that moment, the voice began to take his request seriously. She stammered, "Well, that's a complicated question." Horace had nothing but time. "I suppose it's when you feel the touch of some other being. It's when you know there are others out there who care for you, no matter what you do. Isn't that what it is to feel loved?" Having the question turned around on him brought him back to life. "Are you loved?" "I believe so, yes. I would like to think I am." She was uncomfortable, but honest. "Sir, are you all right?" "Do you know who I am?" he asked, sitting up in bed, now with the receiver in hand. "I'm sorry, sir. No, I don't." "I'm the unloved." "That isn't possible. We are all loved." "By who? My wife is dead. My parents are dead. My friends think I'm insane, and I'm not too sure they're wrong. There is nothing left for me." "God loves you." Horace couldn't suppress his laughter, even though he truly believed her sincere. He instantly regretted it. "I'm sorry, miss. I don't mean any disrespect, but I'm a man of science. I'm responsible for killing God." "Oh." She spoke with pity for his ignorance. "I'm sorry to have to disagree with you, sir. But you can't kill God, especially since you clearly don't even know who or what God is." Horace was shocked by her audacity. Only one woman had ever talked to him like this before. Samantha? The phone was dead. So there it is, guys. Thanks again for listening. Please subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to this. It really helps me keep going, seeing the numbers gradually climb. Any like, any share, any review really helps us out in the algorithm. And as we all know, the algorithms rule our life. So let's take the power back, give us a little bump. And if you're looking to get in contact with me, you can reach me at undeniablepod@gmail.com. If you're looking to get on, if you have some suggestions, or if any personal insight on the struggle that you guys face as artists, I'd love to hear from you. I might even pick a couple to read on the next pod. So thanks again. I'll talk to you again next week. Undeniable is a creation from Tomcast Industries. Theme music was created by Tony Malik.